Chapter 3, Part 5. In due time, Tomonori Ryosenji was promoted to a full-time professor, and around that time, he was approached by a major big tech company that wanted to invest a significant sum and scale operations beyond his wildest dreams. It was enough to send Ryosenji Electronics out of the startup orbit and turn it into a proper business. The number of employees swelled, and the small husk of a factory they'd been renting quickly became a bottleneck. They needed to think about moving. Everything seemed to happen at a breakneck pace for the core crew, who were all still undergraduates, but meeting Professor Ryosenji and the little monsters of the digital world had given them a massive head start in their careers. That was fun, Yulin said wearily. The digital world really does change lives, Saya said with an overjoyed laugh as she looked down at the ring that now sat snugly around her finger. Perhaps it wasn't the world so much as her world that was changing. I guess I should say congratulations. That would be appropriate, yes. Saya couldn't stop staring at the ring. She was engaged. Well, congrats then. Honestly, my heart is full knowing Kosuke could actually be bothered to ask your ring size and follow through with giving it to you. I know, right? Saya said nonchalantly, showing it off once more. Maybe the digital world could change lives, and the people who live them. Anyway, we've got a lot of new people around. That means a lot more egos to deal with. The investment-fueled hiring spree led to a bevy of part-timers roaming about the place. Oh yeah, what are the new executives like, Yulin? Mostly auditors and compliance folks. This is still years down the road, but it sure looks like the professor's plans to take this whole thing public. That would necessitate shedding both the Ryosenji Laboratories image that was associated with the university and the small-town factory identity of Ryosenji Electronics to forge something more professional in its place. Yeah, well, I may not know a lot about running a business, but I do know that our investors won't get their money back unless we go public. We've been running it way in the red ever since we founded this whole operation, Saya said. Indeed, their revenue has been almost zero, and their profits well below that. That's a venture-backed business for you, Yulin said playfully. Sure is, Saya agreed. That's why they're all staying out of the professor's way while he's busy researching. He's the goose that laid the golden egg. Saya! Kosuke yelled, emerging from the factory at a trot. Hey there, lover boy, Yulin said with a smirk. Wow, right into the banter. All right then, Kosuke said, looking not at all as offended as he sounded. He was too love-struck to care, anyhow. How dare you steal my adorable Saya away from me? Yulin said, undeterred. He was suddenly shaving every day and wearing nice jackets. Was she supposed to just let that go unremarked upon? Okay, I'm not some criminal. Anyway, look at this, Kosuke said proudly, taking up a helmet-like VR headset in his hands and sliding it onto Saya's head. What is this thing? The heck are you doing? Yulin spluttered, adding to the chorus of confusion. I think we've done it. Look, Saya, what you're seeing is... Yeah, I see stuff, but I can't tell what any of it is. What the heck is going on? Saya shrieked in utter confusion. Monochrome images danced before her eyes. It looked like a virtual recreation of what was an insect would see through its compound eyes. But Saya had a feeling it wasn't a virtual recreation at all. That it was actually being filmed from some creature's viewpoint. That's the first footage ever taken through a Digimon's eyes. You're seeing through a Digimon's eyes right now. Professor Ryosenji would not rest on his laurels. He forged ahead with his research in pursuit of even more impressive results. He wanted to explore the digital world firsthand. There was so much more to learn about a world that came about on the network that a screen full of numeric values couldn't tell them. Surely there was a way to engage the 5 human senses and allow people to experience it for themselves. He wanted to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch the digital world. And so he shifted to researching something he called the Digicore. A piece at the heart of each Digimon into which he believed he could transfer a human consciousness, thereby making it possible to experience, bodily, the digital world through the Digimon's eyes. The engineering and technological foundations already existed. Neurologists were well into studying how to convert the human consciousness and memories into data, specifically targeting the development of personal AI trained on that data. There were electronic devices that used sensors to directly modulate neurons, helping those who had lost their sight or hearing rebuild those nerve endings and motor functions. Those could be integrated into humanoid companion androids under development in the robotics sector. All of these disciplines were at their core investigating ways to build a human from scratch, when taken together. That posed significant ethical hurdles, and the government regulated the space so tightly that none of these things would move beyond the research phase for 10, possibly even 20 years. The digital world, however, had no such ethical hurdles. It was all just a simulation, after all, a world of bits and bytes. Therefore, the thinking went, it should be possible to use Digimon as a sort of VR camera. Not just any camera, though. One that links the Digimon's 5 senses with that of a human. If Digimon were truly AI creatures, then their sensory data should be easy enough to capture and interpret. All that remained was to get a human consciousness into the digital world and link it to that sensory pipeline. In other words, to embed it into the Digicore. This ought to keep me occupied for the rest of my life, Professor Ryosenji had said with a laugh. The research would be anything but boring, that much was certain. Ryosenji Electronics began exploring the fundamentals of mind-linking technology in secret. They had to minimize the risk and have answers for the ethical questions the technology presented if they were to dispel the notion that it was impossible or some sort of occult practice. Saya Ryosenji was one of the first people to successfully link her consciousness with a Digimon. Mind-link test complete, Yulin said over the PA system. She'd amend the report with the precise number of the test later. Saya led on what looked for all the world like a repurposed dentist chair in test chamber 4 of the Ryosenji Electronics lab. The sparse, grungy nature of the old factory building lent the proceedings a back alley feel, like some seedy cyberpunk experiment being carried out by a shady doctor. Vital check, Yulin said flatly. Heartbeat, blood pressure, body temperature, all normal, Kosuke replied, going down the list on the monitor in front of him. Saya wore a helmet that monitored her brain waves, and other sensors meant to measure her vital signs were plastered all over her body. All the information her brain was processing came filtered through the Digimon to which she mind-linked. All of this data, her vitals included, were then processed in real time by a supercomputer that had to live at the lab so it could run at full tilt. DS levels dropping, subject regaining consciousness, severing mind link, Kosuke said calmly. Yulin calmly approached the chair with a bucket and sheet in hand. Saya convulsed as she came to with a groan. She carefully reached her hands up as her legs kicked the chair repeatedly, as though her body was recalibrating and firing up her muscles. She sat up and removed the sensor helmet from her head. Here, Yulin said, holding out the bucket. Oh, I think I'm getting used to it, Saya croaked with some effort. She broke out in a smile. The first time she successfully mind-linked, she woke up covered in her own vomit and other excreta in front of her father, fiancé, and closest friend. So this was definitely an improvement. Professor Ryosenji clapped softly. Sufficient rest is required between mind-linking sessions. There is a significant risk of side effects, which can be overcome with time. Simply knowing that is possible renders this experiment a rousing success. The founding members, Professor Ryosenji, Yulin, Kosuke, and Saya, were the only ones in Test Chamber 4, which required a unique security pass to enter. The mind-linking project was top secret, and only they knew about it. Nice work, Agu, Saya said, picking up the Digimon dock connected to the helmet she now held under her arm. The dock's display showed a pixelated representation of a Digimon on its small display, under which was written Agumon. The creatures were every inch the small monsters the professor had described. This one in particular was modeled after a bipedal carnivorous dinosaur. Regular searches of the network turned up greater numbers and species of Digimon all around the world, and sooner or later they would need to build a taxonomy in order to keep track of them all. Professor Ryosenji, in the meantime, chose 3 different Digimon he'd hatched from their Digitama, and gave one each to his student to raise. They were constantly changing tips as they learned how to best care for their new charges. The biggest change came from Kosuke, who began living according to a more regular schedule than he ever had previously on account of the Digimon's need for regular care and feeding. Digimon were fragile creatures, after all.